Hello and welcome to another episode of Zion's Finest. This is episode number 85, and I am JK. I'm hosting today, and I am joined by the magnanimous, that's a word, right? Samuel K. Sweeten.
Hello, hello. How's it going, JK?
We're doing great. We are excited to record this episode for the first time ever, wink wink, and we are excited for no issues to come in this time. How's life been, Sam?
Life's been good. I've been, getting games of Shatterpoint in, and I won't be getting games of Shatterpoint in for the next couple weeks because it's going to be finals. I'm excited to talk about Shatterpoint now and then have a nice balance patch to look forward after I'm done with tests.
Yep, a couple weeks, all of the things we're going to talk about are going to go out the window, and we're going to start over. And you know what? That is exciting. So today we're doing a box review. We did one a couple weeks ago with Cassian. We're going to do another one later with Krennic. But today we are doing our favorite Jedi. And by our favorite, I mean he's just another Jedi, Kit Fisto. This is the Kit Fisto box, and we're excited about him. I think he has a lot of potential. We've talked about him a little bit in different episodes. He is an 8-point primary. He has 3 Force. His box is interesting because he has a 5-point secondary in Nadar Veb, whom we call Ralph Nader. That's the jump through connection, especially for international people. If you hear us talk about Ralph or Nader, that's who we're talking about. And Ralph Nader's a politician from way back when. That's the whole joke. And anyway, there is another secondary. He is the clone commander Phil, and he is 3 cost. So we have a 5 cost secondary, we have a 3 cost secondary, and we have a 3 cost support in the Phil's clones. This is very interesting. It's the first uneven box in the way that works, where you can run not a full amount. Sam, first impressions, kick it off. What are your thoughts on the Kit Fisto box?
I think it's a really cool design choice that they made to have a box that doesn't necessarily total up to all the squad points that come with Kit Fisto. It allows for some interesting list building opportunities. I have been playing this box a fair amount. I've been super excited about it. I'm excited to get more of my thoughts in about it as we go through more of them as a whole. But I think this is a very fun box, and I think this is a very great addition for the Republic as a faction, and just really adds some great options at all these different point levels for Republic.
It is funny to get a 3 and a 3 when we know that Mace is about to come out and become a 7 supposedly, but regardless, let's talk about it. Let's going to jump right in. We're first going to talk about the Jedis. We have, of course, Kit Fisto and Nadar. And Kit is really what I assume a Jedi is supposed to be. He's got Force Speed, Dash to Advance. He's got Riposte. And his supporting fire is very interesting that we're going to talk about. It is a supporting fire dash, which means it's the same timing window as all of those coordinated fires and things like that. But it is the ability to move people around the table out of activation. So it's not his movement, or it's not his action moving someone else. It's someone else's action that he is continuing to move. Sam, I know that you like supporting fire. You've played with it. What is supporting fire doing?
Yeah, so this ability has just continuously grown on me. Like, I used to think like, oh, this is just niche but useful. And then I thought, oh, this is pretty good. I think this ability is actively very good. What it does is it's kind of an action economy thing. It can allow you to replace a move action with a focus or a take cover, or can really allow you to sprint across the board. So examples of some plays you could make: if you have playing with Kenobi and you have some clones, they're going to spend a force to dash and hunker. Then they're going to make an attack, and you can use supporting fire to dash them again. And maybe before you make that attack, you realize, hey, I don't need to move this turn. I can spend a focus action. And getting +1 dice on each of those clones is very impactful, especially for supporting units. For units like Padme or Cody, who have Sharpshooter, they're really bad right now, but we have a balance patch coming up. And for units with those focuses and no innate way to focus, I think this is incredible action economy. Additionally, I think it allows for, reversely, if you have a unit that gets a focus on a dash, like Wolf or Wolfpack, this can kind of allow them to take cover. So it allows them to see more play in those Kenobi lists. Outside of that, it allows you for some really deep dive plays. So you can now make an attack with Shock T. After the attack, Shock T can now dash, and she can get some extra movement from her tree, so she can actively move across the entire board. So it really enables some more efficient turns for the entire rest of your team. It's much more impactful than it looks like on first glance. And it pairs really well with the fact that it's range 5 from Kit Fisto, which is huge, and Kit Fisto is really hard for your opponent to displace.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion as to whether or not this would be used. Obviously, it shares the timing trigger with Coordinated Fire Expose, which is the gold standard of Republic uses. ARFs live there, but there are times when that's not needed. There are times when in order to turn 2 points, you need to take a shot and dash to a different point. There's a lot of reasons why this makes sense. Kit Fisto as a whole is great. We're going to talk about his tree in just a second, but he is just a stat stick in terms of who he is just so solid. But supporting fire is what is probably going to make him go from one level to the next.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about Nadar. He has an out of activation movement for Galactic Republic. So starts, he dashes someone. One of his big things is, I've been waiting for this. This is an interesting thing. He has stuff that moves people around the board, but he has this ability called I've been waiting for this. When an enemy primary or secondary character, basically, if they move into them voluntarily, advance, dash, jump, or climb, and they are engaged with Nadar, he gets to heal 2 and then refresh a force. Whether or not this works is kind of where Nadar is going. Well, that's not completely true, but this is one of those big pie in the sky things that can be so interesting. It can also be completely played around, but it is such a fun thing, and it's a way to bring force back with him that Shock T brings the force inherently. He has a chance to just replace him. Sam, you've played a bunch of Ralph. You're a little higher than everyone else. Give me your thoughts on this whole, on especially I've been waiting for this.
So I think I've been waiting for this as a really interesting ability that gets worse at higher player skill. Like, the better your opponent is, the less this is going to be of value to you, because they're just going to play around it more. There are some interesting use cases for this. Realize this triggers off of any type of movement. So like a reposition technically gives an advance. If somebody repositions next to Nadar, it's going to trigger that. If they have movement from their defensive expertise tree and they move into engagement with Nadar, it's going to trigger that. So you can set up some plays where you kind of force them into triggering this. If like Nadar's like right on the center of the objective and he attacks Ezra or Kanan and he shoves them away, and then they use their expertise to dash back onto the point, and they'll trigger that and get some heals, you get some force back. So there's some plays that you can set up, but those are kind of niche. They're not always going to happen. This ability is really good when you can get it off. It's just, it is relatively easy to play around. What this really tells me with this is when you play Nadar, you want to place him dead center on an objective to force people to engage.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, is he's going to be higher skill cap to play against. You're just going to have to pay attention. You're going to have to watch him. I do really like You Can't Defeat Us All to kind of swing back around, just because any rangeless dashes for your entire team basically are great.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that's a solid tactic ability. He can use it on himself. And I do think the other thing he has where I got carried away, the thing that allows him to dash whenever a primary moves, I think that in particular is very good on first contact.
Yep.
Because of those objectives are very close together, so you can often get to them with a single dash. And, well, there's groups of them that are very close together. And because they change so frequently, Nadar can usually stay on a point using that ability.
Yeah, and first contact has notably been tricky for melee, and I think this is a really spot where Nadar can earn some ground. He has a bit of an issue. We're always wary of 5-cost figures that have 8 health, which is a big thing. We'll talk about a little bit more of his survivability on his tree. First, we're going to jump into Kit Fisto, and we're going to look into his tree a little bit. First off, Shichu is just incredible. It is. Yeah. He's never going to die. He has elite expertise trees. Just everything about it. 1 for 1. His defense is super, super good. The thing that makes all of this actually work is he also has his ID, which is, I'm afraid I must request your surrender, which means Inform Shichu, he has Steadfast constantly, which, oh, by the way, is really good, and he adds an expertise. And his single expertise is 2 block, and 3 expertise is 2 and a jump. Just everything about it is really good. His Ataru side is just different. It has more movability. It has a little bit more pushes in specific spaces. It's I guess they're both 3 and 4, huh? But a little bit more of everything. He rolls an extra dice. His defense is worse, but he also has protection and pin immunity on that side, which is pretty good. Sam, Shichu, Ataru, where are you sitting? Why do you go to one or the other?
Yeah, so let's start talking about Form 1, Shicho. So the math behind this is very, very good. With Steadfast and the extra expertise, which you still get even if you're exposed, there is literally not a character in the game right now that is favored to get 3 shoves on him on an attack, which is what you need to shove him off from the center of an objective. Most characters, except for maybe Aiden with a Hask strike on her side with shoves, are not favored to get 2 shoves on him. And the only unit that is expected to down him is Vader 2, who is literally expected to down basically anybody in the game. The extra expertise really drops the percentage of spikes. People are never going to spike him, and he is going to be the hardest unit to displace via attack shoves in the game when he's on this form. Especially when you consider that he has a 60% chance to get a jump in his dice roll if you factor in the expertise. So You're never getting him off the point with an attack. Also, he has shove on 1-2 with incredible expertise. I basically always keep him in Shicho. Ataru has a couple problems for me. That second step being double recover is super situational. Sometimes it's going to be great, but other times it's literally going to be nothing. And having I love having recovers on tree. I don't love having them being a forced step. I love them being an option. And so sometimes it's just going to feel like a dead step. So having those 2 extra dice, those 9 dice, can sometimes feel like they don't actually net you anything. Additionally, I think that protection is significantly worse than steadfast. An immunity pin is great. And sometimes if he gets pins and you really need him to move, you're just going to flip to this stance just to get rid of the pin. That's the use case most of the time I see for this stance. It is slightly higher damage max, but it's really, really backloaded, so you're not really expecting that anyways. Mostly he's just going to live in Form 1 and occasionally swap to Form 4 Ataru, which definitely feels like the I get stabbed in the stomach by Sidious side.
Exactly. It's honestly not a bad side. The dead step of the double recover is tough, but really, if you gave Form 4 Ataru to a lot of different figures, it would be an upgrade, if not a significant upgrade to them. It's just that form like Shichu is just so good, especially 2 expertise for three markers for crit hit is super good on offense because that's really where you're living. That's where you're going to start expecting that 3 to 4 hits on 7 dice. I know that's where the turn happens, right?
Yes.
You get 2 expertise and you get a crit, then you're getting 3, and 3 damage, push, disarm is really good, or 5 damage, push, strain can also just be devastating for people. He's great. His tree, his stats, just everything about it, it looks so good. Final thoughts on Kit before we move on a little?
You're 100% right that his stats and his trees are just very good. I guess the last thing to note is that if you need movement, flip to Ataru, you can get 3 jumps and 4 steps. And so he can literally fly across the entire board between movement, force, speed, triple jump.
Yeah, three jumps on 4, which is really not like outside of the realm of possibility, is an insane amount. It could also, not that you're going to have pin because you have immunity, but you can, because you have those recovers next, you can do some funner things different ways. But he also has it's a very optional side is Ataru. But again, I think you live and die in Shicho. I think Sam's just right on the money there, and that's why I bring him, because he's smarter than me. Let's jump over to Ralph. He has... Okay, the thing that's going to jump out to you immediately is 4 dice on defense. He is a little bit weaker that way. His expertise tree is actually really good on defense. 1 for 1, 2 for 2 with a recover. The 3rd step is an extra recover, which is fine. He has a really interesting tree. He has the ability to push and push pin, or his push pin, the top step, is available on either step 4, 5, or 6. He only rolls 7 dice, but he has this ability, I will hold them off. And that is, if you're attacking a supporting, you get an extra dice. If you're attacking a secondary, you get 2. If you're attacking a primary, you get 3. It does cost a force, but he has a lot of interesting things in here. He does an 8 damage max. His expertise, it's kind of stunted where it has, you're getting 2 markers for 2, and then you're getting still 2 markers for 3. It just turns into crits, which of course crits are better than hits, but it doesn't scale as much as I think you'd want it to. Sam, talk to me. Where does Veb's stance? Where does his tree? How does this all work? What are you looking for as you're running him?
Veb has his tree is actually, I think, pretty decent for a secondary. Again, it kind of has the potential of a dead step. In your second or third step, each time it's going to be forced to be a jump and a recover. However, I like that better than just having recovers. It gives you some optionality of, like, even if you don't need to recover anything, you still have a jump. The fact that he can do 7 damage on 4 steps is really, really high for a secondary. That's just really great. And you're right that he really kind of wants to be only rolling 1 or 2 expertise or 5 expertise, because 4 crits is 4 crits. It's, you know, it's going to be most of his tree. The math works out that most of the time when you're attacking, doesn't matter who you're attacking, you want to be used I will hold them off. Even if you're only getting 1 dice, that 1 dice is typically 1 dice against a support will typically do more than 1 dice against a primary, just because you're more likely just to have all your strikes blocked by a primary's defensive stats than by a support's. So, you know, the better the defensive stats typically, the more dice you're going to be getting. And when you're rolling 10 dice against a primary, you're going to be getting through some steps just because of volume of dice, typically. So Nadar can push out decent damage, and he has decent access to shoves on 2 and 4. He can expose people. He has a cool pin shove step at the very end of his tree, which can be, you know, step anywhere between step 4 and step 6. So, you know, lots of optionality on his tree. That's good. The real sticking point is for defense. This is where he feels like he really relies on the recovers from people engaging him, or you need to give him some extra defense via Mace or via Kenobi, or you need like some way to like trigger revenge to like punish your opponent when he inevitably gets wounded. Unfortunately, Core Box Ahsoka isn't great right now. Hopefully that changes the buff. Mace also, we know he's getting buffed. So a lot of the places where he has the synergies that want to play with a squishier character are kind of poor right now. Hopefully it gets better with the buff. But I think that's part of what makes him feel kind of weak, is that he's relatively squishy, and the ways to mitigate that in Republic are kind of weak right now.
Yeah. You can obviously run him with Obi. You're getting the Obi buff, but is he good enough on his own? That's always the question that you're going to have to answer, because he doesn't necessarily have access to hunkers that are available with a lot of the other OB benefits. Yeah, that's the general consensus when this first came is everyone was very down on Nadar. And I don't disagree with that per se, but after talking, Sam has been higher than most after playing him.
Yeah.
And I don't think Sam is glowing about it, but
no. I think that Nadar is I think he's playable. When I've initially read him, I thought he was just going to be awful, like never going to bring him. Then I played with him, and I thought, hey, there's some cool lines here. He can roll a lot of dice and push out a lot of damage. He's just a good damage dealer for a secondary. Really top of the class in that. He's going to push out a lot of damage. He's going to be getting a fair amount of recovers, and he has some decent out-of-activation movement abilities. But he's a melee only, without diceless. Kind of squishy. He has some weaknesses that you must be cognizant of when you play him, that keep him, I really think, from breaking into that upper echelon of, oh, this is a very competitive figure. So, no, he's playable, but he's not really like a tournament piece.
Yeah. I think he has 8 health, which we've talked about, that break between 7 and 8 being a big piece, and being able to survive an attack and then recover a ton, in theory, can help you out. But yeah, he's just missing a little something. He's nice because he doesn't really take up a lot of force. I will hold them off obviously does take force, but his actual kit doesn't necessarily need it, and in theory he can get it back. That's Nadar. He exists. You have to know what he is, and the better you are, the more you're going to know how to avoid him.
He will be an unprepared player. If you are playing against Nadar and you just willy-nilly engage primaries and secondaries into him, he's going to get a ton of value and feel really, really good into you. And you're going to be like, what is this character? I heard he was bad. He's just getting a ton of force back and a ton of recovers and then dealing 8 damage to my supports in a single attack. And,
Yep.
well, don't engage him. Play around that. Yeah.
Yep. All right, we're going to move on to the next part, and this is the Phil and Phil's clones. I'm going to call out one thing really quick. They both have the Phil's Squad tag. And that's important because someone has a Phil's Squad activator. And that is this guy, Clone Commander Phil. He is the secondary. He has 8 health. So do the clones. They also have 8 health, which is a huge thing. But one of the cool things about Clone Commander Phil is when they take a shot, you can pay a force and have a Jedi advance. Towards an objective, there's obviously a lot of make sure that has to be going the right way. But because it's just toward the objective, you have a lot of optionality in terms of where you get to go. Clone Commander Phil has the grappling hook. His force dash is climb and a hunker. Phil's clones have a standard defensive maneuver, so they're just dash and hunker for their force. And the interesting thing about Phil's clones is this supporting fire recover, which is different. We talked about the supporting fire dash, which probably takes precedence. Yeah. Sam, you have seen these. You've played these guys a little bit. How do you feel about Clone Commander Phil? How do you feel about Phil's clones? Where are they sitting in terms of the Republican hierarchy?
So I really like you specialize in making entrances. I think it's a really, really incredible ability. What it allows for out of activation movement, not on just Phil's turn, but also on a support's turn. And it's really, really hard to get out of activation movement on a support's turn. There's very few abilities in the game that do that. And typically it's like identities, where if they wound something, dash them with Luminara. Giving you something like this from Phil really can make Phil's clones activations incredibly dynamic. So they can make 2 attacks, shove off 2 people, advance a Jedi. You can have incredible swing turns with Phil's clones. So I think this ability is very, very good, but it requires a certain amount of list building. And I think, interestingly, Commander Phil and Phil's clones want to be in separate squads because you kind of want to spread out where you have this ability across the board. So in one squad, you're going to have Phil. In the other squad, you're going to have Phil's clones because the Jedi must dash towards the objective that the target of the attack is on, right? So if you have them on 2 different sides of the board, you're going to be able to get those advances towards objectives covering the entire board instead of just on one side of it.
And I'm just going to add, it's important to know that this is one of those, the target has to be within 2 of an active objective. The shooter does not. So they can shoot from wherever they are away as long as the target is within 2. That's where the dash, the advance comes in.
Yeah. So I think this ability is very, very good. I do think it requires a certain amount of list restrictions. What I think it does is it opens up play for 2 7-point Republic primaries if they're buffed to be strong. So you can play Anakin Mace with Commander Phil's clones, and then you bring, with Phil's clones, you get a 4-point secondary. With Commander Phil, you get a 4-point support. And now you have people who can move both Anakin and Mace around the board, and they both feel good for 3 points. You're able to spread that out. Of course, this requires that both those primaries become, if this is going to be a competitive list, it requires both those primaries to receive buffs that make them competitive. But I think that these pieces could be very good in that particular list, and I've been very impressed by them with the unbuffed pieces that I've played them with right now. So I think they're strong units and have very powerful and interesting list building tools that you can add to a squad.
Yeah, and we'll get to the trees and stances in a second, but they are very ability based in terms of they are true supporting characters. They're not built to just kill things. They have some fun abilities for that, but they are really, both Phil and Phil's clones are there. What you see there with their ability to we specialize in making entrance and pushing people around and just being bodies is what they are. If you are looking for, ISFs or whatever from these guys, you're not going to find it, but you are going to find just incredibly solid pieces, again, for three each. Let's jump forward and let's look into their trees. So again, the trees they exist.
Yeah.
Phil's tree is a little bit underwhelming because he's a 3-point. The Phil squad has some fun things, but it has a very fine expertise. It's not a great expertise, but again, they are 3-point clones, and they have some fun stuff. And one of the things that they do have is we can take them down easy, which is when they make an attack, if they are attacking a primary, they get to add 2 dice. And that's a super fun idea. One of the big things you'll notice is range 4 for Phil, range 5 for Phil's clones. So again, as you're thinking of where you're shooting for, we specialize in making entrances. You got to pay attention to that. Phil's squad has a little bit less defense melee, so again, they're going to be harder to take a point. But the trees aren't bad. They're not great. They're kind of exactly what they should be for a 3-point secondary and support. What jumps out at you on here, Sam?
So I want to note with we can take him down easy. I feel like you're rarely going to use that on Commander Phil because you can either use that or we specialize in making entrances. Between the two, you're mostly going to be using that. However, Phil's clones can use both because they're going to be able to make 2 attacks. And a 9 dice attack into a primary is significant, right? That's when as soon as you hit that sort of numbers, even with mediocre expertise, which their expertise, don't get me wrong, is very good for a 3-cost clone. It's the best for a 3-cost clone.
Yep.
So you're going to be starting to climb your tree a little bit. Not that it's an impressive tree, but they are a 3-cost clone support with 2 shoves. And I think the only other clone with 2 shoves support is Wolfpack, maybe Tekko. Wolfpack and Tekko, right? But having shoves on 2 and 4 is very, very good. When you look at Phil's expertise and you think, it's kind of meh, but then you realize he's rolling 5 or 6 dice. He's never rolling more than 1 or 2. And for 1 and 2, that's really good value. If he just rolls 1 expertise, which he's likely to do with 5 and 6 dice, he's getting 2 results. So though their trees are pretty, just fair for a 3-cost, they have good expertise to back that up. They can roll some extra dice if you need. I think that these guys are, like, when you compare them to the old designs, I think these are a significant step up from previous 3-cost Republic characters.
Yeah, I think these are very much what these people should be, and kind of very solidly the baseline. The 2 results, whether that's hits or crits, for 1 is always good. I talk about their expertise being fine, but really you just want fine on 3 points. You don't want bad expertise. Now, of course, if this was the expertise for a primary, these are bad. But 1 for 1, 2 for 2 for the clones is perfectly fine. And then the 2 for 1 is always good. On those 5 dice attacks, those are where you want to put your 5 dice attacks into those 2 for 1 abilities. And that's exactly where they're coming. That's exactly what's coming in here. All right, let's jump in here. We talked a little bit about this as we went, but fixes and lists. Right now the world is so cam heavy. We saw a bunch of it. Obi-Wan is there as well. Sam, what have you been running, and what would you like to run in the future with any kind of groups of these? Give me 2 lists really quick.
So 2 super interesting lists I think you can build are an aggro list with Cam. You play Kit, you play some of your more aggressive clones like Wolf and maybe 212th. Just something that has like a little more firepower than your average clone. And you can get them focuses with Kit Fisto. You bring them with Cam, and you bring Shock and ARF Troopers. And then you have this aggro list that has some good defensive units in Kit and Cam. And you're trying to trigger Cam's identity to get your dashes. If you want to go more defensive, I think you can play a Kenobi list is super interesting, where you can bring Nadar, you can bring Phil's clones, and then you have Kenobi with Rex and Tekko, and then you have some interesting things going on there. You're going to really want to use that supporting fire to allow your guys to take hunker actions, especially with like Nadar, try and dash him with the tactic and dash him with his out of vision movement so that he can just dash, take cover, and then make a melee attack and use supporting fire to get him on a point. I think those are 2 interesting places to start at. I think if Padme gets a buff, we're looking at some really interesting things with supporting fire there. I think if like Cody gets a buff, you can see some really interesting things with like supporting fire and his sharpshooter. So there's some interesting things in the future, but those are the 2 lists I would start with right now.
Yeah, it's cool. The one thing I'm interested in is whether or not Kit finds a unique place. Because I think that he kind of has some Mando in him where you can kind of throw him anywhere, and he
Yeah.
is just going to be a person that always is on a point, and you're never going to get him off a point, and you let the rest of your list do the rest of your list. In one of the previous episodes, we talked about being just a pure tank, and Kit Fisto can do that. To get him off a point is just nearly impossible. Yeah, I think that's where we are. The problem with any of these is 2 weeks from now, everything's going to be up in flames, and we'll have to reevaluate anyway.
One more thing I do want to know as far as a fix, what he fixes for right now, and this is going to change in a couple weeks from now, but I think he's really good into Iden. Shooting him, he has a ton of defensive stats. Even Iden's not going to be, shoving him off. ISF aren't going to be killing him. He has, riposte, even though they're barely going to be in melee. Kit Fisto, in particular, is kind of a problem for Iden to deal with. They have no dice list to get him off a point. So he has an interesting niche there.
Perfect timing for her to be yeeted out into the netherworld. Okay. Splash, Ripple, Thud. I'm going to go a little first. A couple weeks ago, I think these guys started very low. Well, they started in the middle. Everyone thought Nadar was fairly low on there, but they really thought that the 3-point clone Phil was going to take Pawn's spot and make Mace somewhat interesting, even though Mace was still bad. He was going to have a big splash. I think Kit Fisto is going to be a figure you have to watch. I think this is one of those boxes you're going to have to buy. I'm going to put them in a low splash. I think I had them previously in a Ripple, but I think they're going to be in a low splash just because I think they have so much utility. I think eventually Kit's going to become one of those figures that's just around everywhere, and you have to pay attention to him. And you know what? I don't normally do this, but he has to be a splash because he has the coolest model out there right now. Deal with it. It rocks. Sam, give me your thoughts.
So I was talking with Matt Poocher the other day about Kit Fisto, and he made an excellent point to me that I agree with. He says, I think Kit is going to be one of those models like Hera or Han that people are initially down on, and that people get some reps in, and that they show that he is an incredibly powerful figure that must be considered in the meta. And I agree with that. So for that reason, I think Kit Fisto is going to be a splash. He is going to be an interesting unit that as people get reps on and use him and figure out play lines with supporting fire dash and see the value of his defense, that he's going to make a splash. I think that Phil and Phil's clones will also make a splash, but on the lower end of that, well, they might just be a large ripple. I think Nadar is going to be a small ripple. I think he's just good enough to show up in some lists, but I don't think... I originally thought he was just going to be a thud. I think he's better than a pure thud. He's better than Riva or, Poplu or 3PO, right? He's a tier above that stuff, but he's still not super...
Yeah, he's not an active liability, but in order to run him, you have to know what you're doing. All right, Kit Fisto, exciting. Get his box just because he's really cool looking. I think the clones are really cool. The models in general, they just knocked this one out of the park. Sam, final thoughts? How are you feeling overall?
I agree with you, JK, that these are the best sculpts in the game. So if you're just looking for coolest sculpts, this is the box to get. Overall, I'm really excited about this box. I think if you're a Republic player, you should definitely check it out, especially if you're on the Cam train. I think this is going to be one of those go-to mix and matches with Cam.
Yep, 100% with you. Thank you all for coming, for listening, for liking and subscribing. Wink, wink. Come join the Slack. Let's talk about it more on there. Tell us why we're wrong, but more importantly, tell us why we're right, because we run on pure ego. And Sam, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, JK.
And let's do it again soon sometime. All right. Thank you all. Love you.